Retiring in your 40s and 50s with $12 million sounds like a dream. But when you factor in taxes, charitable giving, income needs, healthcare costs, and the reality of funding a retirement that could last 4 decades, it's going to get complicated fast. Let's see how we solve this for the Whitmores. Hello, my name is Mike Fry from RWC for Life. And our specialty with our firm is helping people plan for their retirement. Whether you're 40 or 50 years old and have sold your business or come into a large amount of inheritance or money that you are trying to figure out, can I retire now? And can I have this money last me for the rest of my life? It could be 40, 50 years. You need a solid plan that you can be confident with. So let me introduce you to the Whitmores. The Whitmores is a family that we're going to be using as an illustration over the next 4 to 5 weeks in a planning scenario of showing you how we would set up a plan for somebody who has come into a large amount of money and they're still very young from a retirement standpoint in their 40s and 50s. So let me tell you a little bit about them. David is 51 years old. His wife, Jennifer, is 48. They're married, 2 kids, 16 and 19. One of them is still in high school. The other one is in college. They live in the Chicago suburbs. How convenient, since that's where I'm at. They just sold their business and netted $12,250,000 after taxes. They desire to retire now. They just sold their business. They don't want to go back to work. And now he's 51 and she's 48. So that's a long retirement planning horizon that most people don't think about. Most people think about their planning horizon when they get 65, 70 years old. So we have a challenge here of, yes, we do have a large amount of money coming in, but we also have a long time frame, and we have other issues that are created when you receive this amount of funds. So we're going to address that. Their annual expenses, living expenses to cover their bills, is right around $20,000 to $22,000 a month after taxes. On top of that, they are charitable-minded people. They do give about 10% of their annual income to their church. So we're going to figure in about a $24,000 a year giving to their church as part of their planning, and that will increase with inflation. So some of their lifestyle goals are that they do want to travel. They want to travel multiple times a year on nice trips with their family. Their kids are in college and entering college, so they have this to support the educational expenses. And then the other thing they would like to do is consider, can they, in about 2 or 3 years, purchase a second home in Colorado? And they're looking to see if they can spend about $1.2 million on that home and pay cash. That's what they would like to do. So what are some of their planning priorities? Well, the first thing that we're going to focus on today is creating a paycheck from the sale of the business. So we're going to actually today break down and show you how we would design a paycheck system for the Whitmores to net them that $20,000 to $22,000 a month of after-tax income. And of course, there's going to be tax strategies to talk about portfolio allocations, legacy, risk management. And throughout the series of these videos, we will address these. So let me put a little disclaimer out here. We are not giving any tax advice. We are not giving any investment advice. This is an illustration of the Whitmores for a couple to illustrate a younger couple on how to retire. This is not to give you specific tax or investment advice. For that, you need to consult with your own investment advisor or your own tax advisor. So this is for educational purposes only. So thank you for that. Let me get right into some illustrations with the Whitmores. So here's the Whitmores, and here's a breakdown of their whole financial picture all on one page. This is what we do for our clients. We put this together so they see everything that they own together, individually, and in trust. So as you see, David here, who's 51, he does have a little bit in a Roth IRA, about $275,000, and he has about $507,000 in his regular IRA. Jennifer, 48-year-old Jennifer, his wife, she has about $145,000 in her Roth and about $273,000 in her regular IRA. They do have a little bit of money that they took out of the net sale of their business, and they have some in their joint checking account, about $42,000, and they have a little bit in their joint bank savings account, $108,000. So they got about $150,000 in their liquid account with their bank just to cover expenses. They have two children, as I said earlier. One is 16 and one is 19. They did set aside some money in a 529 for both of them, and you can see that the one child has about $145,000 in their 529, and the other one has about 105 in their 529 that they'll spend for their education that is coming up for both of them. And then you see that they have a joint investment account here with $12,100,000 in it. That $12,100,000 is basically the proceeds from the sale of their business, and it's sitting in a brokerage account. All of these accounts are set up and invested in the market, which we will cover that in a later video. Then they have a home, modest home for somebody with that much money in the bank, but they have a home that they purchased for $945,000, and they have a mortgage on that home for $600,000. So this is the Whitmores. Their net worth is about $14 million. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to set their income plan up today. So this is going to now show the retirement cash flow that we're spending out in year by year basis. So in 2025, and then every year I can click by and these numbers will adjust and show us what those years look like as far as their cash flow expenses. Okay, so under the inflows, they don't have any more inflows because they no longer work and they don't have Social Security at this time. They just have a bucket full of investments to deal with. So the only investment that they do have currently that is giving them an income is they are going to be pulling money out of this 529 plan. So what we've done is matched up the 529 distribution, and if you look right here, that distribution is $29,900 for the year, and that's because their education cost was $29,900. So we are withdrawing from the 529 for the first child, the one that's 19, to cover. So there is an inflow of about $30,000 coming in, and there's an outflow of about $30,000 going out. So I'm not going to focus on that. That's not going to be part of our bucket plan we put together because it's washing itself. You got $30,000 coming in, $30,000 going out for expenses from the 529. But I did want to cover what that was. The other thing that we have under goals is we have the education goal, which is being spent, and then we have their charitable giving goal. They give to their church about $2,000 a month for charitable giving, and so that is part of an outflow that they are spending, and that's part of their plan and planning needs that we have. So their expenses are as follows. They have an annual expense of about $234,000. Here's the breakdown of that. The breakdown is that they have a healthcare cost estimated at about $2,000 a month. Now they have to go purchase their own health insurance because they no longer have their business, and health insurance, as we know, is not a inexpensive item. So that is what we have figured in there for the health cost is $24,000 a year. So the housing cost breaks down as this. They have their mortgage principal, their mortgage interest, so that's their mortgage payment, about $47,000 a year for their mortgage payment. Their property tax at about $22,000, $21,000. Their insurance costs on their home, $4,200, and then their maintenance cost of about $6,000 a year. And then their living expenses is really everything else. That is their money at $132,000 a year that they are basically spending about 11 grand a month on miscellaneous expenses, groceries, traveling, eating out, entertainment, and electric bill, those type of things are coming out at $11,000 a month. So those together give them $234,000 a month of expenses, plus their giving costs of $24,000. And because of the way their portfolio is currently set up, And because it is in basically a taxable investment at this point, they are paying a fair amount of income taxes, and they are paying to the federal government about $40,000 and to the state about $13,000. So that is a snapshot of what that year one looks like for them without any planning as far as tax planning, investment planning, charitable giving planning. This is just what do they look like right now, and they're coming to me saying, how do I take this money that we have and give me a monthly paycheck so I can afford to have these this lifestyle that I'm accustomed to. So here is how we set up the buckets. Now, some people will say, hey, too many buckets, I only need 3 buckets. Every case is different. So in this case, what we did is I'm pretending that this client, this is how they wanted to set up their buckets, and I wanted to show that there was multiple buckets set up to lay out their income plan. And so what we start with is this. What is that year one income need? It's $340,000. So that is actually higher than what we showed in the software, but I'm trying to leave some wiggle room. What we find is when somebody retires, especially the first couple years of retirement, is that there's a lot of unknowns that you're going to not know until you cross the bridge, okay? And it does take a couple years for people to settle into retirement. So you have to go into retirement with a little bit of a understanding that you have to have some flexibility, especially in those first few years, not knowing exactly where things are going to settle. So the client has $13,700 of investable assets that can be used to generate an income. However, if you recall, we're taking 1.2 million out of this to buy a vacation home. So we're accounting for that and subtracting it right out of the assets available for income. And we're going to work with a measly $12,500,000. So how do we do this? We take the 12 million, and then I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this illustration page and show you, because the bottom is where the money is coming out. So the money is basically trickling down through these buckets and coming out here. And this is where the client is getting their income. So what we did here in my example, which this is a higher number than they were wanting of 22,000, we're doing a $28,000 distribution right here of income. And then we are including inflation on every year going forward. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing that I would recommend is that the Whitmores take $340,000 out of that 12 million and put it into a high yield savings type of account. Currently, as of today, September 2025, you can get a 4% high yield safe savings account. So that 340 in this example, what we would do is set up where that green bucket is giving out and sending them a monthly check into their checking account of $20,000 to $30,000 in this example for them to live on. So that takes care of year one. Then what we would do is we would take this and say, okay, we want to set aside another bucket that would have years 2, 3, and 4. So this is a 3-year bucket. So basically this $1.2 million would cover as this is going away every year. At the beginning of the next year, we would take another year's worth of income and funnel it into this bucket from that one. So that means that this bucket really shouldn't be taking any risk either, because we're supplying and going to be withdrawing a third of that account over the next 3 years to satisfy another year's worth of income. So if we put $1.2 million in this portfolio, we would want to invest it in things like CDs, MYGAs, buffer portfolios, treasury portfolios. We'd want to look for some conservative income producing type accounts to invest in for that bucket. And then that bucket would then plenish for the client for the next 3 years. And so this would end up taking care of the first 4 years of the retirement. So really, if I zoom out a little bit, and what you're going to see is basically, as we are spending these buckets, these other buckets are adding and trickling money down. And what's happening is when they're trickling money down, we're going from a higher risk portfolios up here to lower risk portfolios. And then as that money's coming down, it is coming into a lower risk portfolio. So why do we do this? We do it because it allows the client to sleep at night. It allows the client to know that I have a system and a paycheck coming to me, and if the market is really having some large fluctuations, it's not going to affect that paycheck that I have created for myself, because that paycheck is coming from accounts that are invested to not have any or very little risk right here in supplying that income. The main component of risk is time frame. And so the longer time that you have, the more risk a person typically can take. So if we have buckets that are set up for 10 years out, that bucket can have a higher risk than a bucket that is going to be supplying income today. That bucket should have a lower risk. And so that is the reason we do the buckets. So let me continue on. For the next couple years after that, now we're into years 5 and 6, this portfolio, since we are in a 5 to 6 time frame, this portfolio would still be a conservative portfolio, but it can definitely have a little bit more upside and a little bit more risk than, say, these two portfolios here. And so we would put another 2 years worth of income in this bucket. And then in this bucket here is now years 7 through 9. We're putting another $1.3 million in this bucket, and it can be a more of a moderate portfolio. Then we're into the 10th year. So why did I set aside one bucket for the 10th year? I just wanted to kind of cap off and say, okay, from here down is covering 10 years worth of income. That 10th bucket can have a much higher risk portfolio, and then that takes care of year 10. Meanwhile, we have just covered 10 years worth of income, and we have $8.8 million invested in a long-term 10-plus year bucket that we can invest for this client and not be super concerned because he's not touching it for at least a 10-year period. And then as these buckets drain out, we would then just take the 8.8 plus the gains, hopefully, and replenish and refill the buckets for another 10-year strategy going forward. So with that said, I'm going to close this video down. This is video 1. We will try to get another video out very quickly to cover the next scenario for the Whitmores. So with that said, I would love if you would share this video. If you would like our video, give me a good comment. If you have a bad comment, don't put it on, just move along. I'm okay with that. But anyway, I appreciate you, and I hope you enjoyed the video for the Whitmores, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much. Have a great night.